and gentlemen. And in this session, we're going to focus on social development strategies and the application to practice fields older adults. 我们这一场的主题呢是老人福祉与发展。那首先呢，我们时间就交给我们的主持人，让我们掌声欢迎杨培山教授。Please welcome our moderator, Dr. Pei Yang, Professor of the Department of Social Work, National Taiwan University.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. 大家午安。欢迎回到我们
Welcome back to afternoon session of day 2. At this session, we will focus on social development strategies and the application to practice fields of older adults. It is known to you all that we are living in the aging society. We need to come up with different measures to deal with this issue. Then this is a global issue. In the morning, we heard that in Taiwan, the government is promoting long-term care 2.0. That's community-based network services. I think this is in line with the community-based. And sharing, we have 3 speakers at this session. To my right, we have Assistant Professor of Faculty of Humanities and Social Science, City University of Macau, Dr. Timothy Wan. He actually just reminded me that even he teaches in Macau, but he is actually from Hong Kong. So he would like to present a comparative study on social support rating scale for those elderly who are using daycare centers for the elderly in Macau, Hong Kong, and Guangzhou. The second panelist is from China, Ms. Xi Yan, College of Sociology and Psychology at Southwest University for Nationalities. Professor Yan will talk about the social participation of the elderly in the perspective of developmental social work. And Ms. Yan is also a social worker. The third presenter is also from China, the social work of the Eden, from the Chengdu Eden social welfare foundation. He will talk about how to establish the supporting groups among elders. So we believe that we will hear a lot of very good examples from the 3 speakers. So without further ado, Professor Wan, you have the floor. I'm very nervous.
Welcome all of you coming here. 我首先歡迎各位，用返我自己廣東話講聲先啊！歡迎各位來到這裡。我今天主要發表的是我在澳門做了一個研究。
I would like to talk about a cross-sectional study. This is a comparative study on social support rating scale for the elders who are using daycare centers for the elderly in Macau, Hong Kong, and Guangzhou. As the moderator just indicated, aging is a global issue. You can see that by the 2050, there will be 2 billion people older than 65 years old. That means that the aging issue really deserves our immediate attention. What kind of service do they need? I'm a practitioner. I'm also a social worker. I've been working in this field for 28 years, starting from Hong Kong and now in Macau. Aging means that the function of your body will deteriorate. And also, psychologically, old people have to face the changing society. I think from Hong Kong to Macau to Guangzhou, these 3 places experience economic development, and also they belong different political backgrounds. So you can see that they are developing different models. The daycare center for the elders, this is actually the caring community, and their community care, 3 concepts, taking care of the care for. So caring the elders in the community, this concept is very important. They need to know their place so that they can age gracefully, and that the family members also have a peace of mind. So aging in place is a very important concept. So the study is to compare the differences between the 3 major cities, including their physical, psychological, and social support levels. I use the scale that developed by Mr. Xiao Zhuyan from 1986 to 1993 to measure the social support level. There are some commonality in terms of their background. However, Macau had the colonization by Portugal, and Hong Kong had the history of British colonization, and Guangzhou is under the jurisdiction of China. I believe that Chairman Wu Jintao visited a pilot project a long time ago and found that the community-based service center is a very good model, and decided to promote this model in Guangzhou. So there are more and more daycare centers for elders in Guangzhou. This is a good thing. However, there are challenges. For example, there's a lack of human resources, social workers. People with a background in education, in psychology, joined the team of social workers. I remember when one of the students passed the certification, he actually just studied some basic courses for very short time, 2 nights. And actually, he did a lot of other things during that 2 nights, and he actually passed the exam. Unlike in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, and I know in Hong Kong and Taiwan, you have to pass very difficult exams. The situation in the UK is even more stringent. So I would like to know the differences. That's the motivation for this study. The research purpose include the following questions. What are the SSRS scores of seniors who live in the 3 major cities, and what are the factors positively related to SSRS score? And after other factors are properly adjusted, what are some of the factors that might help to predict the exact SSRS score? I visited 16 daycare centers, 100 subjects from 6 daycares in Guangzhou. So in Hong Kong and Macau, the 4 daycare centers in Macau, Macau only has a 4 daycare center for elders. So I got them all. In Hong Kong, I selected the 2 institutions and visit the daycare centers for elders. This is mainly questionnaire and also face-to-face interview. I interviewed 324 seniors. Before the interview, they were informed of the research. They also signed a consent form. So informed consent is very important. I also collected the demographic data and also their health information of these subjects. And the 3 professors before me are experts in public health. So I worked with them in these projects. We use SPSS statistics version 20 to perform our statistical analysis. This is the breakdown of gender, and we have the more female. 74.4%, almost 3/4 female, and 1/4 is men. I think in Taiwan probably will have the very similar composition. And this is the educational attainment. You can see that 112 are illiterate, and 133 graduated from elementary school, 79 graduated from junior high. Their personal monthly income, you can see that 144 have an income of 8,000 Macau dollars, and also 107 4,000 to 8,000, 73 less than 4,000. This is the marital status. 180 are married, and those who are widowed, 127 and 17 are single, divorced, or separated. And the demographic information, we also can see that the result is that the SSRS score is around 29.34, plus or minus 9.15. And elders in Macau actually yield higher social support is 32 versus 25.2. This is also something what we did not anticipate. We thought the social support level should have been higher in Hong Kong. I actually also make some comment later, and probably the educational attainment plays a part. For those graduated from elementary school, the support level is 30.9. The illiterate is 26.62. So the cognitive ability probably plays a part. Married seniors yield a higher social supportive level than the widowed, single, separated seniors. It's 32.93 versus 25.1. So that's the first part of the research result. For seniors with part-time jobs, we have the very active and energetic seniors who are still making contribution to the society. Compared to others without a job, you can see seniors with part-time jobs yield higher social supportive level. It's 35.7 versus 28.67, and also those who earn more than 3,000 Macau dollars per month yield a higher social supportive level than those who don't have any income. It's 31 versus 27. The personal well-being index, PWI, is 0.164 after regression analysis, marital status, dwelling, and also personal well-being index all show greater statistical significance. This is another analysis for your reference. The third part of our research result, under multivariate statistical analysis, the social support rating scale, SSRS, is taken as a dependent variable, while other variables with statistical significance are taken as independent variables for multiple regression analysis. The elders in Macau is higher, 5.2. Higher than Hong Kong. So Macau number 1 and Guangzhou number 2. The worst one is Hong Kong. You probably are a little bit surprised about this result. Elders, that's married couple also have the higher SSRS scored is 5.6% higher, 5.6 higher than those are widowed or single. And the income, the elders earning 3,000 or less than 3,000, you also can see the difference. And the educational attainment also plays a factor. Some of the chart to explain our model. Income is a very important measurable. How much money do you have in your pocket? I think this is very important indicator that the social support level and also the achievement. After they pass their active working age, they still feel that they still can make some contribution to the society. They can still take a part-time job. They can achieve more in their retirement. Because they have a lot of experiences in their second or third career. So the elders with income usually yield a higher social support level. All this has been shown in the 3 places. The government needs to take this into account, especially when the government is enacting its social welfare policy. This is the right direction. I think the elders are very important monetary resources. Discussion number 2. We actually have the government investment or relationship with elders. If the government has invested in the well-being of elders, then the feeling of SSRS, the score, is usually higher. Especially we see that in Macau, because Macau has very prosperous gaming industry. Macau has very famous casinos, and we also collect gambling tax. Since 2006, the government actually have distributed their cash share, pension, and cash gift. This year, every Macau citizen received 9,600 Macau dollars. Actually, we only have 500,000 to 600,000 citizens in Macau, and other people you see are visitors. They are migrant workers, or they come to visit Macau.
Thank you.
I know my time is almost up. I need to hurry up. So every year we receive the cash share and the cash gift. Then in 2007, citizens in Macau received around 8,000. And in Hong Kong, in the same year, the government did the same thing, that you issue around 600,000 Hong Kong dollars, and that measure received a lot of criticism. And also, there's elders allowance. So every month, the elders receive 5,000 to 6,000 Macau dollars. That's not too bad. They actually can have the very easy and comfortable retirement. In Hong Kong, they need to meet a set of criteria to receive 2,000 or 3,000 Hong Kong dollars. That's why Hong Kong ranks on the top. With this reason, I don't know whether the Macau government will continue this cash share policy in the future. And also, SSRS, of course, it is a subjective experience. And PWI has long been used measures to measure the individual's subjective well-being. However, I need to say that there are still differences in daycare centers for elders in Hong Kong and Macau. In Hong Kong, they usually receive elders with medium or severe level of physical impairment, or even Alzheimer's disease. They need to go through a process of evaluation before admitting any elders to the daycare centers. And the purpose is to maintain their ability, developmental potential, and living standards. All these are done to help the seniors and also relieve the pressures of their caregivers. One of my colleagues actually has a very serious carrying problem. His mother has a severe dementia, and his mother demands a lot of attention, and also needs a lot of help in her daily life. So it is a huge burden on him. In Macau, well, we have the professional team to provide this type of care to non-bedridden elders or elders with pretty good mobility in Guangzhou. The purpose is to relieve hospitals with the high pressures of hospitalization of elders. That's why there's such a plan to establish daycare centers for elders. And in Guangzhou, the city, the elder daycare centers and actually accommodate a lot of elders with very good mobility. For those bedridden elders, they actually do not stay or use the service of the daycare centers. So very different from the daycare centers for elders in Hong Kong. I think in Guangzhou, they actually have a model daycare centers for elders, organized by the team of the Professor Yang Ruoxian. I will speed up. Well, sample is not enough. That's the deficiency of this research. It's better to have 500 elders in each city, so that we can have a much better sampling. As I said earlier, if it's possible, I will also work with the government for a continued or follow-up that study to remind the government that they actually can put in more investment in taking care of the elders, so that the mindset change will be made. Thank you.
好，非常谢谢温老师、温博士。
Thank you very much, Professor Wen. Now we'd like to welcome the second speaker for Xinan Ethnographic University, Professor Yan Xi. Actually, our first-line practitioner. Let's welcome her.
Good afternoon. Very honored to come to National Taiwan University to participate in this workshop. Perhaps I am the only one anonymous. I didn't let people know that my identity. So actually, I talked to the project managers, said I'm going to share the project in Taiwan. Should I mention your names? They said, no, no, no. We wish people can, let us know how to solve some of the problem issues, give us some common advice. So the subject is the study of elders' participation in the social service. I have divided my presentation into 7 categories because the first subject is the senior citizens. Or some of the previous speakers also talk about the issue or severity of aging population. Because of one-child policy in China, we have a tremendous amount of elders. By the end of 2015, the data showed about 16.1% of the population are aging populations or senior citizens. So by 2050, that figure will even go as high as 30%. So under these kind of situations, we have encountered a very unique situation. That is, it doesn't mean 60 years is a retiring age. For the women, it is around 50 years old. If she's not a blue labor, and maybe she will retire around 55 to 60. So actually, the so-called elders percentage is much, much higher than the data presented. So with all kinds of demands from this aging population. We have identified some target who participate at this community works or community participation, which is a very important concept for developmental social works. So we would like to, study in this regard. Through the community participation, it can satisfy their adaptation, their performance, or their quality of life. However, this research is a little bit different from other institutional study. So this is from the supervisors or monitors perspective to see this project. And when we launched this project, actually, I have no idea about this program. So I'm an outsourced supervisor, a contracted supervisor. When I came to learn this project, it is already goes live. So I have visited the case twice per month, and each visit it took me about 3 hours for interview. As a result, actually, I do have a lot of opportunity to modify the program. However, I just play the role as a supervisor, and perhaps I reckon it is not the best one for these seniors. But what I do is, in the midterm, there's a major issue. Later on, what you see, the context of PPT are just reveal the normal or standard situation. However, by the mid of the progress, there's a lot of changes. So in the end, when I talk about the challenge, I will cover that. So this is a solid institution founded on July 2013, because the founder and their leader team came from alumni of Xinan Ethnic University. It was a community-based institution. However, from their proposal, program proposal, you can see they need to go to the community from Monday to Friday. So it other means when they engage the community, when they perform their service, and then after the service is finished, they will just leave the community. So the other task is by Eden Foundation is also targeted at senior citizens, but their approach is different. So therefore, for this, I would interpret the performance of this agency. So this is a very small community who will serve only 3,115 residents. In China, I would say this is a tiny mini community. So when we talk about the senior citizens, they have 13.58% of the populations are senior citizens. So this is a relatively old community. So they have some different categories. From this diagram, you can see there are only a few residential areas, including this is number 76, and this is the number 14. This is 36 here. So for all the senior citizens, they all came from these three sub-districts. So they all have some common background. That is, some of them are retired from the same institutions or from the same company. So actually, there are also a few other migrant workers who stay in this community. So it is a rather small flat. Our office is right here. Basically, we have a very intimate relationship with the entire community. So with regard to the training to the volunteers, To be honest, in the beginning, the original design of this program is not for the senior citizens, but to train or cultivate the community volunteers. However, in the end, most of the client or candidate they came, they are senior citizens, and majority of them are women, female. So you can see perhaps we should provide our service to those senior citizens. So when we write these articles, we kind of modify the original projections. So by the end of this program, when they submit a new or renew the grant, they change the title as senior citizens in the community. And so we found that for those senior citizens, they are relatively young. They are probably more appropriate for these volunteers to provide a service. So our slogan is to recruit the volunteers who are willing to provide service to the senior citizens in the community. So in the end, this is what we have accomplished. We have established a volunteer association for the senior citizens in the community. So actually, we don't have the so-called final step. This is what we want to do or want to achieve for the 3 steps in the middle. However, before we close the program, we found a group of youth or young people. They are very enthusiastic to participate in this program as volunteers. This is another successful factor, meaning that you have to present the social work as a professional and systematic approaches. So at Chengdu, maybe the government, local government is fully aware of it. However, the local community need to be educated. So this is November 21st in 2014. We have inauguration ceremony. Like I said, they are really very old. Although originally we didn't expect to recruit so many old peoples. So they are not just fresh senior citizens. Some of them are in their 70s or even on their late 80s. So when they came to our center, we thought, well, that's better than nothing, right? So we just start to work together. This is a very happy ceremony. So we expect to have 15 members. However, there are 22 people who came to our center to register. So then we move to the second stage. That is, first we conduct the group training. So we have list the titles of those 8 training sections. So since it is not consistent for people to carry on the philosophy of social workers and not to mention volunteers. So we have done monthly training. Actually, we only have one project, that is a candidate and 3 volunteers. So when we proposed this project, we took initiative as the volunteer to provide service for the community members. So we also want to do so-called the small group or developmental or therapeutic. But when they really talk to those grandparents, I mean, they are in 70 years old, 80 years old, or maybe just 60 years old. So we kind of ask them to learn from the ground. So if you use non-verbal gesture to communicate with them, it is very helpful for those grandmas and grandpas. So it is a very interesting feedback. So when they went back, they helped their family to rearrange the furniture. So it kind of surprised their grandchildren. So it seems to them that these grandparents are more lovely. And however, when you further teach them some skills, they probably don't like it, and then they will just disappear. So you have to, encourage them. So out of those 22 volunteers, if we only see 10 showed up, then it's kind of embarrassed. So because we were inspired and encouraged in the beginning, so we have prepared quite a lot of tools, facilities, but only a few senior citizens showed up. By that time is around January. It is that time for Chinese Lunar New Year. So by March 13, so we switch our title as a disaster prevention or disaster mitigations. So the local government asked us to do something like that. Since we are in Sichuan province, we have experienced some major earthquakes. So actually, that we consider that is a very appropriate subject. So for the volunteers and those senior citizens, we kind of maintain a good communications, and so we ask them to let us know what kind of training they would like to see or prefer. So they say they want to engage more social service or community service. So we offer some of the courses like the community governance because they have motivations. So that's in total we have 8 times. So the worst is training, but at least we still took some photos and to use it as evidence or document. This doesn't mean we are the best in Chengdu City or we have some advantages, but the fact is that the people we serve are really old elders. So this is we also arrange those the elder volunteers to do some group activities. So we just ask them to rearrange furniture like the chairs or tables. So this is mostly activities. So by the end of the program, they even ask us to conduct more such activities. So for volunteers, we need to listen to what they need. For example, we have like in the winter there's a family reunion time, or in the spring there's a tradition for outing, and so they have a very good participation and engagement. So in Chengdu City, we also like to try or eat as the rice dumpling. And in this group activities, they kind of open up their hearts. So the third is these are the final graduation ceremony. We issue them a certificate, we sing together, we dance together, we offer certain awards. So we just give them this particular name. It's very interesting. The third part is that the third thing we did is, I think in the computer the format is different, so I don't want to change. Actually, this is as the training program for the volunteer. Our expectation is help them to implement some of the policies and conduct some activities. So as the volunteers training is supposed to be the best one or most popular one, but we initiated by the end of the November because prior to that we need to train the individual case management. So in the end, all those activities are very welcomed, but very few really walk into the society. So when we close this program, by August 28th, we have a so-called established associations. So without further ado, I would like to jump to some conclusions and what kind of challenge we encounter. There are two major challenges. The first is their attitude, including their physical, mental, and socio-economical variation. So there's a significant variation with regard to their social community participations. They kind of dominate. Some of them are the high-ranking managers. They kind of dominate the microphone, or it's very mean. But when they have a frustration, we would take so-called election. But only 3 persons showed up for the voting. So we asked everyone, say, we want to establish an association. Please come and vote and exercise your rights. But they don't want to come. They thought that maybe if they show up, they will probably be elected as the chairperson or president. So in other words, majority of those seniors, they want to be a follower. They don't want to be the leader and take the lead. So we kind of convince them to say, please come to experience it. You are not just a standby watcher, or you're not just serve as a role of a leader or the person who gives a command. So we need to give them room and need to empower them. So, but what happens in the end? They just give up. And I thought we want to create a teamwork, but they say, okay, why not just be the captain or be the chairperson? Since you have a social work background, you just come and lead us. We will follow you. So it took only 1 year, but that was the first program or project in the community. But our original goal is that you can be independent. Then now it looks like we need to stay here for the rest of our life. So that our original goal doesn't reveal or meet our original goals. So unless you show or you can demonstrate your professional social workers' knowledge, otherwise they don't trust you, they won't follow you, or then they don't participate in your activities. So first of all, you have to demonstrate your professional expertise. Secondly, you need to be very humble, low profile. So as you can see, this is a quite simple program. We just conduct 3 activities per month. So we just finished, and so it looks very good. But we actually spend a lot of extra energies. So 3 activities per month is definitely not good enough. So our team members actually live there. We conduct a lot of household calls and visit them and talk to them face to face to let them know we really engage in the community events. And so with that, those candidates are more likely to trust you and won't give up. So the change is the bits by bits and accumulated gradually. So in the end, we establish associations for them to exercise certain powers. They also receive some awards, and also they can were invited by other communities. But unfortunately, when the program stopped, everything's terminated. So when the social workers withdrew, so we cannot just rely on those 3 activities per month. So you can see we didn't build a very powerful impact by volunteers. So when you review their motivations and the intentions and the ways of participations, so that's not very solid. So when we conduct a follow-up visit, everybody's gone. So the dumplings and the rice dumplings they served before are all gone. So they no longer provide those services. So nowadays, since in Chengdu City, such a program only valid for 1 year. So with regard to the sponsors and organizers, they don't like to see one project stay in one location for years. However, if you want to change a community, you cannot just do it for 1 or 2 years alone. So that's another issue we need to think about. So I really expect you can give us some advice and help us out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your sharing. I think everybody listened to your story attentively. The third panelist is Ms. Zhang Cui, also a social worker. The second speaker actually just gave a brief introduction to your project. So without further ado, we'd like to give a round of applause to welcome Ms. Zhang Cui. I like to move around.
如果说你听累了，站着啊，你随便动无所谓啊。
If you want to stretch a little bit, feel free to do that. I also welcome any interaction with the audience. Ms. Yan just told about a project in Chengdu, and our project is also in Chengdu. This is the topic: establishment and development of Senior Community Empowerment Alliance. This is a mutual assistance alliance. Asked by the second speakers, why you only recruit elders? The answer is elders have more time. Young people need to work. And so when we surveyed the community, we came up with this idea to establish this Senior Community Empowerment Alliance.
好，那个最简单的这个东西是什么？其实它也是社区的一个载体啊，就是我们用我们的那个
What exactly is a Senior Community Empowerment Alliance? Then elders are our potential resources. This is actually a micro public welfare platform for the senior community. Also a possibility of building a volunteer team of the low-income seniors, and also it could be a major force indispensable for the entire community development. The goal is to provide lifelong learning for elders, so we will see less demented elders. I told about we actually conduct interviews and visit in the process. We went through these different stages: relationship establishment, resources management and demand disclosure, resource introduction and development, service development. This is our original concept. Let me talk about the background of this project. This is actually a mature community in a major city, and a lot of businesses are also concentrated in this community. We actually have approximately 6,000 individuals over 60 years old, 878 older than 80 years old, 49 over 90. The seniors' characteristics, in the past there were many state-owned companies. So you see many retired public servants in this community, and this group usually is highly disciplined. We also see the older political party members of CCP's, Chinese Communist Party, and also they are highly active. They even have their own self-organized teams for entertainment and recreation. For example, some singing groups or dancing community groups. And our joint community movement is to use these platforms and build a service model to help elders so that in the process of aging, elders can enjoy services provided by other elders. Resource management, personnel recruitment, so who does what? And also we need funds and social workers need to be paid. And also the event seeking is another important issue. Community intervention. We usually will talk to the leaders of the communities first. I talked about there are several self-organized groups in the community already. So we will talk to the leaders, opinion leaders. And these leaders usually have resources and have influence, are more passionate about these projects for the benefit of the community. And we also need to build a network of volunteers. They have less influence because they have less power, but they have the capabilities, they have passion. I talked about opinion leaders. They like to become the supervisors of any project. In any community, you will see different types of people. Since this is the elder empowerment project, so we actually focus on senior education, senior entertainment, senior self-fulfillment, and senior dependency on others or assistance, mutual assistance for senior citizens. We need to lend off their psychological state. Some seniors act like children, so we need to know how to communicate with them. We selected this site because in this community, elders have time. They stayed home all the time, especially for elders over 80 years old. They also have chronic illnesses, and they know their neighbors, and even they have their colleagues retired in the same communities.
就是老有所容者，因为老年跟我们一样，大家都是
Senior citizens like us, like young people, they also need entertainment. They like to play, they like to have a good time. So we start out from an approach most acceptable by seniors or most liked by seniors. And also some senior citizens like to make some handicraft, for example, some weaving work. Education, senior education. I mentioned the lifelong learning. Well, elders do not want to be phased out in the community, so they want to learn new things. In China, for people graduated from junior high school, usually they can read a little bit, so they are interested in learning how to use a computer. And also, health is a very important issue. So the second topic is something we did in the second phase. So we start from food, how to have a proper diet. We introduced nutritionists into the community. Nutritionists even go shopping with elders to tell them how to select the right kind of food for their diet. They do not focus on what brands, but they teach elders to read the nutritional information. As Ms. Yan just indicated, they conducted home interviews. We also did the same thing. It's not in-depth interview, but we need to know their lives, and also we need to know what they want to learn. This is the earlier event. They actually came abroad. Their devices, or we provide their devices for them to learn how to use computer. And they do not know how to upload a video. They do not know how to use WeChat. Another issue is that the dialect in Sichuan is very different from Mandarin Chinese. So it becomes very difficult for them to use a computer. So they need to learn the pinyin first. Sometimes they even need to look the word up in the dictionary. Senior education, we provided nutritional data. I just mentioned that we introduced nutritionists into the community, helping them select the right kind of food for their diet. And the smartphone, I believe that you use Line. Line is more popular in Taiwan, but in China we use WeChat all the time. And such as communication software or program is very important for them to know what's happening in the outside world. And that in China, we even use WeChat to distribute red envelope during Chinese New Year. And elders also need companies. So we have volunteers go to their places to have a good chat with them. And we actually have some follow-up in-depth interviews for the solitude elders. And we even had a good meal with them. That's for the second phase. The Senior Empowerment Alliance has a goal that as long as you want to reach out, you actually can find somebody to provide assistance to help you within the distance of an arm's length. This is what I just talked about. We send volunteers to have good meals with elders. We even cook with them. And if there are elders living in the community, we will invite them to join these lunch rally. This is a very important point. Elders are social resources. They are not just burdens to the society. They don't want to be marginalized by the society. We need to have a stage for them to show and tell their talents, so that they can tell the outside world they're still very good performers. They still can do the things well. They are still making contribution to the society. In the process, we even successfully cultivated resources serving as an intermediary between the project and the community. These people are very important carriers and also a very important circles of the influence in our project. For example, teacher Tian, and she is actually a teacher for our pinyin class, and also some have become the assistants in our computer classes. We started this project from the end of 2014. It ended at 2015. We want to continue this class for the elders. You probably would ask, well, they have different levels of improvement. They have different levels of computer literacy. So where should the teachers start? Well, if they know computer well, then we will have them as our teaching assistants. They can also learn a lot from their teaching process. This is another one. This lady does not live in the community, but Madam Shi is very helpful. She's now a teacher at our handicraft workshop. We try to utilize the resources we can get in the community or even in the neighboring community. So she's a very helpful teacher. In this craftsman workshop, you can see that we actually have these different goals: health promotion, and also care and company, and also a partnership. We need to let elders know that they need to continue their learning process. Well, as long as they find something meaningful to them, they can start the learning process. Well, I'm not saying that there are good things coming from this project, since we started from very basic level, but still we see some limitation. For example, the capability to execute the project and also the management. To achieve our goal, I think we probably need more patience. We need to provide long-term company. And they also lack planning and also systemic thinking. So how they can achieve the goal sometimes needs more guidance. So this is some of the limitation. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
好，非常谢谢我们以上。
Really appreciate the three speakers to share about their first line practical work and their experience. So I believe you have a lot of questions for the speakers. Now I would like to open the floor for questions. Good afternoon. I would like to ask about the Professor Yan's question. Perhaps maybe it's a time constraint. Some of the questions still have some doubt. Could you identify yourself? Yes, I came from a social work agency in China. Now I'm the supervisor in that agency. So when you talk about some issues in your program, actually my question is, first of all, so when the social workers develop the program, so-called the mobilize the community. How did you initiate that program? Because when we start a program, the first thing we need to do is mobilize the community. Doing that, we need to understand who are active members in the so-called community opinion leaders. We would like to ask them to provide some support or advice. So my question is, so when you talk about community mobilization, how did you do that? The second is when you talk about in the activities, I noticed that you will train the interview skills. So, well, with regard to the interview skills, we consider that it's rather difficult. So I'm very curious. But so you are training those elder volunteers. So what's your initiative? I mean, what's your motivations? I think the social works development in China is still under exploration or infant stages. So my experience is that if we want to promote the social work, we need to localize those expertise and also create local professionals. So the third issue is that so when social workers design the program, whether they also utilize the concept of developmental social works. For example, in the social workers in our agency, when they design the program, one of the goals is to say that we need to consider sustainability of this program, and then we expect that such service can be carried on. These are my three questions. Thank you very much. All right. I think this is a target specifically for Miss Yan. Okay, I really appreciate your questions. First of all, because this aging institute is very young, when we activate, when we go live, it's only 1 year old. So because we were founded in 2014. First, regarding community mobilization, because this is a relatively young agency, so when they are not fully aware or understand some of the projects or the value in that community. So when they design or submit the program, they are not aware of in the end, they can serve those elder peoples. So it kind of just, they build or create a community demand. So when they implement those programs, when they want to mobilize the community, they will communicate with some opinion leaders, not only elders, but see if there are any residents willing to participate the program. So they say, no problem, we have some old factories, and actually they are very active. So they didn't really, walk into the community, but just talk to the community managers, and then before they really went to invite those residents. So actually it works. So they have gathered some residents. So I want to admit that we do have a problem with regarding to the awareness of the demands. The second question. Oh, right. This is just exactly what I said. That's the issue, because the social workers are just freshly came out of the school. The agency is relatively new, so they just duplicate on their learning from the school in the community. So why I say it is immature, because they lack a so-called logical consideration and sophisticated planning. So as a supervisor, I just do and learn at the same time. What's your third question? All right. So this is another major issue we have, because we cannot sustain the program. Just like Mr. Zhang mentioned, it's the same. So that kind of answered my question. The most difficult part is that this program is a one-year project. So, but later on you found that you need to have a long-term company, because they have a so-called the stationed social workers. So they kind of provide service and receive service at the same time. So by that kind of bilateral relationship, you can sustain the program. So basically what we did is just open a lead, and so the challenge is to sustain the program. Thank you very much. I have some experience in China, but what I learned is, in the beginning, the challenge is that the students just set up some kind of naive objectives, or they ask to do something they prefer or they have interest. The second is regarding the sustainability. I think, after all, this is maybe we should start from some cases, or it's not just for fun. So start from the client, and then I would think about what happened to this person, what is this person's demand. Then if that is the case, then you have a greater possibility of sustain the program. Then the second issue is, what's your budget? How much is your budget? So if this is a 3 years program, then if you have time to expand other stakeholders who can help you to sustain the so-called self-sustained program. That's my comment.
Any other questions? Ms. Yan, Ms. Yan, let me introduce myself. I'm a graduate student from Science University of Guangzhou. My hometown is Sichuan. I have some experiences in Chengdu. One social work service station. I think it is related to the interaction between the social workers, community, and the social organization to develop a project. In the process, the interaction is very tricky. The social workers has to work with the community leaders, and the social worker also need to organize the community members. So I would like to know what you think about this triangular interaction. You have to respect the needs of the community committee, and also you need to talk to the members. Could you shed some light on this? Thank you. This is the issue of intervention. and there's a triangular interaction. There's also a balanced relationship between different players. When we start such a project, and the government need to think about and recognize whether or not we have the capability. From the perspective of the social worker, we need to think about whether I have enough resources, or whether I can get enough resources or mobilize enough people to provide a project well suited to the needs of the community. In the early process of intervention, needs need to be very specific. We need to know what the community wants us to do or needs us to do. I would never tell the community that, from my perspective, what we want to do for them. So I probably will have some ideas, but I will list 5 or 6 items, and the community members will choose what should be included in the services. So this is a communication process. Especially, we want to establish good relationship with the community members. We send the social workers to the community, and we also talk to the leaders of the community to have a meeting, something like town hall meeting, to tell them our objectives and also tell them the likely benefits to the community members. This is just like marketing. I don't know whether I have answered your question. Maybe Ms. Yan, you can add to what I just said. Thank you very much for your question. I think this is a very interesting question, the triangular relationship interaction. Now, this is a big headache, actually. Actually, my project also encountered this problem. I talked about this new organization. This community has never experienced something like this. So the new people, new organization, new community, new project. In the early stage, there were a lot of conflict or distrust between different players. Why community members trust organization better? They want to have some benefit from the project. They do not want us to make trouble for them. So the community has its own perspective. It takes a lot of communication. Sometimes we also see conflicting views between the community and the community members. So a lot of time we also play the role of coordinator between the government, the community, and also the community members. Well, we are not the government. We are not government officials, but sometimes we play the role of the coordinator. Why I said that we actually stopped for some time before the Lunar Chinese New Year, because the community members were very angry. They did not want to play the role of volunteer. That they say they have their own problems already. They did not come to our training. So in this context, the community and the community members seems to entangled in some conflict. So we have to understand what the problems they face. Well, I actually find that there's one major problem connected with the garbage collection, and we help them to solve the problem within the 1 week. So the community members were very happy, so they came back to our project. So they have more trust in social workers. Because we are problem solvers, we are not troublemakers. So the community would like to continue the project. So you have these tricky triangular relationship, but if you have the better communication, and you actually can become a facilitator in the process. Thank you. This question, written question, probably an extension of what has been said by Mr. Yan on empowerment and also the empowerment eradication. We have the question from the National Taiwan Normal University. She actually had the two questions. Is it because of time? Are there any other reasons? If the project only lasts for 1 year, what type of effect you think that can be further maximized? Well, please be brief in the interest of time. I think time is a key factor, but there are other factors come into play. It also involves that in the process of empowerment, probably we think we are professionals. Probably we want them to demonstrate their abilities, and also because we think we want to establish some authority over the process. I think maybe because we stick to the mentality of social workers, we do not have enough empathy. But time is a much bigger factor. So in the process of serving them, we really need to have a real empowerment process for the community. So this is something we have to rethink and reflect upon in the future. The second question is raised by Ms. Yan. This is actually for Ms. Zhang Cui. Anything you can do for the elders to demonstrate their strengths? In our project, I actually did not have time to show you some statistics. We have more than 40 core members. They are very active in the community. If you find these people, these are the circles of influence. They probably are the leaders of some singing group, and also the chief of for typography club or other self-organized groups. So they are the opinion leaders. They are leaders of this community. They are also more willing to learn, so we can guide them to expand their horizons so they can provide more services to the community. And of course, this is a great stage and platform for them to show their capabilities with more training. There's a lot more they can do for the community. In addition, we also provide them more opportunity to step onto the stage. It's not just performance. We will also bring them to other communities. They will become facilitators to show and tell their experiences. Thank you very much. Thank you, our three panelists, for your great sharing of your experiences. Let me summarize a little bit. I'm also a practitioner of social work. I'm also a professor teaching in university. I'm also a supervisor for some projects. So I really like to echo what has been said by the three panelists in Taiwan. From the 1970s, we started off with some community-based services. Until now, I think that you actually can see the community-based services and the professional social work. Well, sometimes we have to pursue the relationship establishment with the community first. trust is the foundation of implementing any projects which can provide benefits to the community, especially sustainable projects for the communities. For example, in Taiwan, we actually have a project that this is actually a manpower bank. Then maybe we only attract very old elders, but through them we can encourage younger community members to join us. So it is a timeshare concept. When they get older, they can be served by others. We may not have the resources like what you have in Macau, or the cash share distributed by the gaming industry profit. So we have to find our own resources, including people and funds. So this is our shared vision. James Mitchley, Professor James Mitchley mentioned yesterday, we have to go back to livelihood in implementation of any developmental social work. That's the livelihood of elders in the community. So we really know their needs, what they would like to learn to enrich their future. So it goes back to the decision of the community member, because they know their lives are much better than social workers. So we had very good management of time. Thank you very much for your questions. Now I would like to go back to MC to make their comments.
To the final session of the day, we'll be focusing on social development strategies and the application to practice fields for children and youth. 那我们今天最后一个场次呢，主题是儿童青少年福祉与发展。那我们时间呢，就先交给我们的主持人，我们掌声欢迎国立台湾大学社会工作学系我们的陈玉文系主任。Please welcome your moderator, chairperson of Department of Social Work, National Taiwan University, Professor Yuwen Chen。掌声欢迎。
好，谢谢哈。
Thank you.
谢谢大家。
Thank you.
所有坐在这里的人
All of you who sit here, you are persistent to tune in.
The last is always the best. Okay, yeah. Okay, so 我们可以给自己一个掌声吗？
So let's give us a round of applause and thank everybody. Thank you to yourself, especially start from for those who were here yesterday and today. So this is a rather important section. I'm very happy. Start from yesterday. To participate in this conference. Actually, we have two speakers, one from Japan, the other one from Australia. So there are two Australian speakers here. I will speak. I would use English and Chinese.
Introduce our presenters for this session. Our first one is Amy Colleen Wright. Am I right? Yeah. I'm very happy that we have her today here with us. She's actually a PhD graduate from Berkeley in 2008, so young. Okay, oh, my student age, okay. And then she actually currently working in University of Wollongong in Australia. I think that's School of Health and Society. Am I right? Okay, and also the one next to Amy is her colleague, Lini. Lini is also working at the University of Wollongong and graduated from University of Sydney. Am I right? In 2010, even younger. Yes, perfect, yeah. So they both are going to present issues related to youth and children. And Amy's topic is actually on the social investment in early childhood. Okay, and I read it from the book, and I'm going to listen to their fantastic presentation. And Lini is actually going to present working together to reduce energy poverty. That's really a special idea to me, and today I'm kind of go through her PowerPoint, very interesting topic. I think she changed her PowerPoint a little bit, right? A little bit, yeah, with some new pictures I kind of scanned through. And then it's both topic are pretty much working with children and their families, and how they were working this topic and how this will influence their life. That's very important issues. Then we will listen to that. And 我们最后一位发表的人是我。
Our last speaker is Dr. Wu Yixuan. Actually, she's a PhD student in Japan. So I just Google is in Kyoto. Now they have a very good maple leaves. She's in the School of Social Science. She graduated from Dongwu University, Suzhou University in Taipei, and so she got a master's degree in Japan, and now she's pursuing her PhD degree. So she is going to write her thesis in Japanese, so that's very challenging. So she's going to share with us about her practical experience. So in last section, we have covered children, the youth, and our future. So we would like to see the application on the developmental social work. Without further ado, let's pass the microphone to the speakers. The first one is Amy. Let's welcome Amy.
And thank you for the welcome and hosting from National Taiwan University and Eden Social Welfare Foundation. This is my second time in Taiwan, and I'm very pleased to be here again with my colleagues. So today I'll share a little bit about how social investment is done in policies by the Commonwealth Government in Australia, and we'll focus on different themes. So first to start about the reasons for investing in social investment in early childhood, and then talk about common policy strategies that are used for investing in early childhood, then describe what is done in the case of Australia, and then identify some of the strengths and limitations of the policy approach in Australia. So this approach is really looking at the policy level of what's done in the Commonwealth of Australia. So the reasons for investing in early childhood, what are the benefits of social investment in early childhood for children, for families, and for society? So we hear different arguments about why it's important to invest in the future, and some of the common arguments that are made are that there's a two-generation benefit when you do social investment in young children. So it's about supporting families to meet their caregiver responsibilities. So that means enabling them to work and providing safe care for their children while they're working, while also ensuring that children have a platform for health and development on which to build their later experiences. So making sure that they have preventative health care and to make sure that they've got stimulating early childhood education and care experiences that will develop their cognitive development and also their physical and social emotional development. So with one kind of investment, particularly in early childhood education and care, you can hit two different goals, which is to support parents to work and to meet their responsibilities as caregivers, and also to ensure that children get the best start in life. Another argument that's made in terms of advocacy on behalf of investing in early childhood is around the broader societal gains that can be made. So there are arguments that can be made around reduction of inequality. So a very sad thing is often to realize that if you don't start investing early in children, by the time they get to school age and they start primary school, it's often already too late to make a difference. So there's already, there have been research studies that have shown that children of higher income professional parents hear so many more words, so they have a much more developed vocabulary, they have had more stimulating experiences, they've had better nutrition, they've had better health care, and it's then very hard when formal interventions come at the school age years to make a difference in the trajectories that are already being established. So there's a lot of value in starting early. Another is around promotion of gender equity. So we know that women are primarily responsible for very young children, And if you don't invest in services to support their work, then it's hard for women then to be able to combine work and their caregiving responsibilities. So investments like I'll talk about parental leave enable that women can work and take time so that they can meet the caregiving responsibilities and bond with their children and breastfeed and care for children, and then return to work. And so that promotes the rights and the achievements of women. And then there's that realization of human potential for future citizens and workers. So it's about investing in that younger generation when they're young, knowing that that is going to be a benefit that will pay off in the long term as they're adults and they participate in the economy. And some of these sort of economic benefits have been captured in the thinking of an important researcher in this area, who was alluded to earlier in Professor Midgley's presentation, James Heckman, who talks about a kind of formula that can be applied to thinking about investing in the early years, and that is to invest in education and human development, early childhood development, in order to develop, meaning to nurture cognitive and social skills of young children, and then sustain. So it's not enough just to invest in the early years, because if then children go to subpar primary schools and secondary schools, and they don't continue to develop and having enriching experiences, then those early gains can be lost. And we see that in the research sometimes on Head Start in the United States, that you put a lot of investment, policy investment into early childhood, but then for very low income children, if they go to a very poor, under-resourced primary school, you can see that the gains will not be sustained. And so it's important to sustain, he says. It's not enough just to say, okay, we've invested in the first 6 years, okay, then you're on your way. You have to continue to sustain through effective education, through adulthood. But then ultimately, societies that do this will gain. So the gains will come by having a more capable, more productive, and more valuable workforce. So that's really around social investment, about the rates of return that Professor Midgley talked about earlier. You have to spend some money, but you get more back in the end, because these are the children that will be the future workforce. And if you do these things where you invest in their education and development when they're young, by nurturing their social skills and their cognitive skills, you will have a more educated workforce when they're older, and more economic prosperity. So what kinds of strategies and policy instruments are most frequently used then to achieve some of those goals around investing in early childhood? So these are general categories of policy. So one is around supporting parental employment. This would be around providing affordable childcare to families. And so that, first of all, has a economic benefit to families, so they can continue in employment. It's making that cost-benefit sort of analysis. Is it worth it to work? Well, it depends on the costs that are associated with working. If childcare is so costly, it may not make sense to work. So providing affordable childcare, and also making a childcare available to match diverse work patterns. So it can be particularly challenging when parents work evenings, or they work swing shifts, or their schedules change, to find childcare that meets those needs. So the government then needs to look at providing childcare that meets the working hours of parents. And then also providing some flexibility for families and for parents. And so in terms of trends in policy, there's a trend for governments to provide parents with the right to request a flexible work schedule, so that they can work slightly less, or they can work in certain ways so that they can still drop off their children to school and pick them up. And so having some flexibility, the right to request a flexible schedule, we see that in Australia and in Europe and other countries where that right is becoming enshrined in policy. And then also making work pay. So having a livelihood that is sufficient to meet the family's needs, through things like basic minimum incomes and minimum wage, to make sure that it's will work to keep families out of poverty. So that's one strategy, is to support children by actually supporting their parents to work. Another is around ensuring adequate living standards. So it's around the recognition that child poverty is very toxic for young children. It's toxic for their brain development. It doesn't provide them with the opportunities they need at a young age for adequate nutrition and care. And so for the government to provide some cash assistance to ensure that there is an adequate standard of living. And some countries do that through conditional cash transfers, where there's conditionalities placed on the amount of money, like the Bolsa Familia program that's been mentioned in Brazil, that specifies that to receive the money, the families need to do certain things, like access preventative health care. Sometimes it's an unconditional cash transfer, so just giving the money to families regardless because they have a young child. And those can be called different things, so they can be called child benefits or family benefits, and sometimes those don't come in the form of cash, sometimes they come in the form of housing and nutrition. Particularly in the United States, food stamps is a very commonly accessed, the most commonly accessed type of public assistance that is specific vouchers that can be used for food. And then another major way of investing in young children is to ensure that they have access to quality services. And sometimes there are challenges around this, particularly when their children live in rural areas, but making sure that children can actually access the services that we know are going to be helpful in improving their outcomes. So making sure that there is early childhood education and care, and that it's high quality. So there's been some interesting policy learning that's happened in different parts of the world. In Quebec, they had an interesting experiment where the government decided to subsidize childcare without specifying quality. And so more children, there was a subsidy so that the cost was very low for children to access childcare, something like $5 a day, but they didn't make an investment in the quality of the early childhood education and care. And so actually they realized that there were worse outcomes because of that. So if you just put children in childcare and it's poor childcare, you can see problems with more aggression and emotional dysregulation, and there were impacts in terms of the relationship between parents and children. So you have to make sure that they're quality services, not just that they are in childcare of some kind. And of course, health care is very important. Preventative health care, we know, is very important. And then parenting and family support. So helping parents with the challenges of parenting, because children don't come with the manual, so how do you deal with challenging behaviors, and then how do you provide access to emotional and social support for families so that they can feel supported in their role as parents. So those are the common strategies that are used to invest in young children at a policy level. Then within Australia, some of the primary approaches that are used, I'll describe those. And I'm also going to describe then sort of why these are important types of strategies from the perspective of research, what research says about making these kinds of investments. But first to say that about Australia and about the social welfare system in Australia, it has, as all countries do, it's shaped by its own unique history and cultural values. And in Australia, there are certain cultural values that inform the way that social investment is done. So there's a notion there of a fair go, and basically that people should be given a chance, and everyone should be given a chance. But it's not that it's a core belief among Australians that people have a right to that. So it's an inequality from the starting line at a young age would go against that cultural value that everyone deserves a chance. And then mateship is another cultural value where people take care of each other, so there's a kind of social solidarity there. It hasn't always been extended to certain groups, and so there's a legacy of the treatment of Aboriginal people and also immigrants where that wasn't extended necessarily, it was more for the Anglo-Celtic people in Australia. But there is a kind of strong core of social solidarity which informs policy in Australia. And then there's an interesting history. We went and talked to the National Taiwan University students, and Peter talked about one way that Australia historically has ensured human welfare has been through its mandating a high level of wages. And the students were even asking, how much does a social worker make? And I think they were pleasantly surprised, actually. It's not too bad. So with the way that families are cared for, it was basically that there was a model that a man should earn enough to support himself, a wife, and 3 children. And so it's been called by scholars, what makes Australia distinct is this term from Castles, which is that it's the wage earners welfare state. It's about valuing work, but ensuring that work pays, and so that government regulates and ensures that there's a high wage, and then you can support a family from that. I think that's been more challenging in the light of deindustrialization in Australia, but that's sort of historically it's been the framework. And the government also, in terms of using the rhetoric of social investment, we do see it in policy documents, and in terms of early childhood, most notably, there's something called the Council of Australian Government, which sets a lot of the policy frameworks and the goals for the Australian government. And they have a national early childhood development strategy, and they call it investing in the early years. So there is that idea that Australia has an aging population, like many countries. This is our workforce, and this is what we need to do, make these kinds of investments, particularly in human capital, as I'll talk about. So the kinds of ways that Australia invests in early childhood include parental leave. So the parental leave policy pays for 18 weeks of paid leave at the national minimum wage. And it is targeted at mothers, but it can be transferred to fathers. And there is an additional benefit for fathers, the dad and partner pay, so fathers or partners, that can be accessed. And so you can have 20 weeks essentially with some kind of funding from the government. Of course, there can be other arrangements from private employers, but there's that kind of guarantee. There's been a lot of looking at this and wanting to make it more generous, as I'll say, because Australia is less generous than other OECD countries. But it was a contentious issue. But one thing from the perspective of the US, as I'm an American living now in Australia it's not about should we do this or not, because we don't have a national parental leave policy in the United States. It's about how generous should we be, and how generous should we be to high-income wage earners. And so that's where there was a consensus wasn't really reached. So at this point, this is still the policy, but there are 18 weeks that are covered, and then another 2 weeks for dads and partners. And that's a good investment to make for various reasons. So the research that says, in terms of the outcomes that are associated with parental leave, that parental leave supports the retention of women in the workforce and their attachment to their employer. So some research has found that women generally go back to the employer that they had prior to their leave, and they're more likely to stay in the workforce if they can access paid parental leave. It's also associated with benefits for mothers and for families, including lower maternal depression, which is really critically important, not just for mothers, but for the whole family and for children. So we know that the attachment relationship can be negatively impacted by maternal depression, and the parental sensitivity is negatively impacted by maternal depression. So a policy intervention that lowers maternal depression is a very important one in terms of promoting positive, healthy development and attachment in the relationship. And then we see benefits also for the child's health. So when parents are able to access paid parental leave, international research has said that there's associated with a lower infant mortality rate, lower birth weight, more breastfeeding, which we know is associated with lots of benefits in terms of lifelong health, and the use of preventative health care. So it's an investment that certainly makes sense from an economic perspective in terms of benefits to the workforce and to employers and to the taxes that those women pay, so back to the government in the short term, and then it's better for the mothers, for the families, and for the children in the long term. For early childhood care and education, the way that Australia invests in early childhood care and education is different than some other countries. So it basically invests by putting money on what's called the demand side. So it gives basically a subsidy to the parent, and they can take that subsidy and decide, where will I go with my subsidy in the market? And so it's a kind of a market approach. Unlike the United Kingdom, for example, which provides on the supply side, actually provides a lot of childcare services that have a low or free cost to families. Thank you. So what they do basically is give a subsidy that families can use, and everyone can basically, based on income, you can access a certain amount through childcare benefit, and then childcare rebate is not income tested, so that goes up to 50%. So most people would be able to access some kind of support in the form of assistance for paying for childcare. And that also is a good investment because we know that high-quality preschool programs provide substantial cognitive gains, particularly for disadvantaged children. It can be a protective factor against having a less stimulating home learning environment. And that preschool raises school readiness and lowers grade retention, where children are held back in school. So they perform better in terms of their academic outcomes. And these gains are long-lasting. So there's a very interesting study about the effective provision of preschool and secondary education, primary and secondary education from the United Kingdom that has followed children from different trajectories and different kinds of childcare experiences through high school. And it's found that attending a high-quality early childhood care and education program, you can see the outcomes, the benefits to that outcome, all the way to adulthood. Then finally, the last sort of category I'm talking about is social transfers. And the Australian government makes some funding available, first of all, at the point of birth. So there's some funding that's provided to give a little bit of cash assistance when a baby is born. And there's other cash grants that are income-tested payments that are available for families, and that's split in two ways. One is for the family in general, up to a certain income threshold, tax benefit Part A, and then Part B is for single parents or families with one primary income, and it has a higher threshold of being able to access funding. And this was so that if parents decided that one parent would stay out of the workforce and stay home with the child, or in a single parent family, they could get some support for the family. And outcomes in terms of cash transfers with poverty alleviation. So cash transfers in general can be protective for families against economic shocks or keep them out of persistent poverty. It can be most effective for single parents because of the challenges of meeting caregiving needs and working, and greater threat to vulnerability to job loss. So you have to take time off to take care of children. That can be a threat to keeping a job. But it's most effective when social transfers are combined with strategies of supporting parental employment. So trying to encourage people also to work and supporting them to work in the long term. So I'll conclude by saying there are strengths and challenges, basically, for this approach. It's very good in terms of being targeted to certain low-income groups. It's distinctive because there's a lot of cash payments. And Australia is quite good in terms of being low in terms of social inequality, in terms of children getting stuck at their level of income where they're born. But there are problems with this as well. So it actually is quite a low rate of participation in early childhood services, a lot of children in jobless families, and poor developmental outcomes particularly stand out for Indigenous children, even more so than other countries, that are peer countries like New Zealand and the US. And going forward, I think that we're seeing more trends towards investment in the early years, actually in the prenatal to birth period, trying to integrate early childhood services with other services, and more effort to try to reconcile caregiving and work and how families can do that, because it's a challenge, and the idea of work-life balance is never really balanced. So thank you. I'll leave it there because I'm over my time. Thank you.
Thank you for Amy. I think we have questions, so we save it to the last. Okay? So after our presentation,
all our presentations, we can have questions to all our speakers. Okay. Our next presenter will be Lainey. Is anybody helping her with the PPT? Okay. Okay. And she's going to share with us, like I say, that we talk about the energy. I cannot remember the term. That's Greek to me. It's energy poverty. Okay. 它用的是东帝汶哈这个国家。
A country that we thought may be far.
Australia, but I look at the map. It's actually very close to Darwin. The country, yeah, so I did my work, right? So we can see what happened there, the energy poverty, and they will share with us what she's working with them and then what she found. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank the Eden Social Welfare Foundation and the National University of Taiwan for all their effort and care in putting the conference together and in making us just feel so welcome here in Taipei. So thank you. The research that I'm going to talk to you about today is called Lighting Up Remishu, Working Together to Reduce Energy Poverty in Timor-Leste, and it's an international collaborative between communities and organisations in Kangaroo Valley in Australia and organisations and communities in Remishu in East Timor. It's the first time that I've presented this project, so it's a work in progress, and so I'm very keen to get your feedback and critique. Just a quick overview of the presentation. I'm going to start by just giving you some context about the situation for children and young people in Timor-Leste, especially in relation to energy poverty. I'll talk a little bit about the Kangaroo Valley Remishu Partnership and the particular project that is the subject of this study, the Lampu Diak, which means the good light in Tetun, the national language of Timor-Leste, and it's a village solar lighting scheme. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about the research methods, and finally I'll focus on the social development strategies and practices that are embedded in this project. So, for those of you who may be not familiar with Timor-Leste, it's probably not surprising because it's the youngest nation in the Asia Pacific, and you can see where it is on the map there. It's just northwest of Australia and it's south of Taiwan. I'm not going to go through this history in one slide, but just to give you some, I think, what's pretty relevant context for this project. The Portuguese decolonised in 1975 and Timor-Leste declared independence. But 9 days later, Indonesia invaded and they ruled for 24 years until the United Nations had a consultation, a plebiscite, and the people of East Timor voted to be independent in the year 2000. And what happened as the Indonesians left, and even before the vote, there was a lot of violence, and about 70% of the infrastructure in the country was destroyed. In Remishu, the focus of this study, for instance, the water supply was poisoned. Many children died because of that poisoning. All of the animals in the district were killed, a lot of men, and all of the infrastructure, the buildings, the roads that existed, they were all destroyed. And that's important context. In 2002, East Timor finally became an independent nation. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's the second most oil-dependent nation in the world. Just a few basic statistics about it. Its population is 1.2 million, and about 50% of its population is actually under 5 years of age. Since 2002, Timor-Leste has extended life expectancy, it's reduced child mortality, it's boosted school enrolments, it's reduced illiteracy, and it's completely wiped out leprosy in the country. So it's made great progress, but there's lots of challenges for the people of Timor-Leste. Of the people that are poor, about half of them are children under 14 years of age. About 70% of the country are subsistence farmers, so they're outside the money economy. And about 12, and there's a lot of sanitation and malnutrition issues. In Timor, I think about 70% of people have a mobile phone and only about 10% of people have a toilet. As you can see from this slide here, malnutrition is a big issue for children in Timor. It's improving quite a lot, but there's still a lot of kids that are stunted due to malnutrition and have learning difficulties. The issue of energy poverty, quickly. As you can see, the yellow parts are the parts of the country that have electricity, so not much. And I'll see if I go. I've gone the wrong way, sorry. Oh, now I'm going to get... Sorry about that. Yeah, and the district of Remishu has no electricity whatsoever. It's, if you can see on the screen, it's in the part that says Ilehu. Okay, I just want to quickly talk about some of the impacts of lighting poverty on children. From that photo, you can see that the people in Remishu use naked flame kerosene lighting. Naked flame kerosene lighting is very expensive. They spend about 20 to 40% of the money they have on that little paint pot or that little glass jar. It's very unhealthy. The World Health Organization reports that people that breathe kerosene fumes and soot inhale the equivalent of 2 packets of cigarettes a day. It's very damaging for children. They estimate that 1 life is lost every 20 seconds. And in Timor, 1,200 children die every year from influenza, acute respiratory infections, and pneumonia from this form of lighting. Also, it's unsafe. Many children are burned because it's just this little paint pot or glass container, and so it's very easy to get bad burns, and houses burn down as well. And also it provides, as you can see, very poor light. So kids can't study at night, they can't read their books. They've given me, I've got the wrong slide to show, so I'm just flipping through a bit quickly. I'll just tell you a little bit about the Kangaroo Valley Remishu Partnership. It was formed after the destruction in 1999, and it was formed between residents living in a village on the south coast of Australia and with the people of Remishu. So it's a grassroots, bottom-up organisation. The group works in solidarity with people to achieve a dignified life, and they work on projects like, they basically have long-term personal relationships, and they work on education programs, on ecological sustainable industry, music and things like this. This project, Lampu Diak, is just one of their projects. I'm just going to show you a quick video about that project now. This will give you an idea of what the project's about.
The Timorese call it Lampu Diak, the good light. 16 years ago, Kangaroo Valley began a partnership with the sub-district of Remishu in East Timor. Remishu is a rural community of a similar size to Kangaroo Valley, but Remishu has about 12 times the population. Many projects have been completed in Remishu over the years, the most ambitious being to bring solar lighting to houses off the electricity grid. By October this year, 1,409 solar systems will have been installed in homes, with additional larger systems going to several schools.
Cha-ching, magic.
These systems are highly valued, as are the relationships developed between us.
Thanks a lot for coming here to supply this Lampu Diak for us. Without this light, normally we use firewood and kerosene.
Kerosene and candles give meagre light, as well as being both expensive and polluting.
So, $10 a month on burning this little paint pot.
To ensure the sustainability of Lampu Diak, local technicians are trained to assemble and install the lighting systems, and also to manage the project themselves. Most funding for the project has come from Kangaroo Valley's 3 Treks for Timor in Kangaroo Valley, where walkers and their donors gave extremely generously to make the good light happen. After October this year, only 97 families will remain without Lampu Diak, all in the remotest and most disadvantaged parts of Remishu. Only 97 more houses to go.
I am very, very happy, and thank a lot to you guys who bring the light here. And
okay, so hopefully that's given you a little bit of an idea of the project. The research methods, quickly, is collaborative inquiry. So this researchers uses collaborative inquiry, an engaged participatory form of research, to investigate and document the LAMP-DIAC and investigate its impacts on the health and well-being and the living standards of children and young people. The data gathering methods, that's seen as typical of data collection in Timor-Leste, included observations of the LAMP-DIAC installations, training and how households use it. There were surveys of 133 households using the LAMP-DIAC, interviews, about 50 interviews with community management committee members, members of the different organisations in Australia and in East Timor, group discussions and documentation, photographs and video. Now I'm going to concentrate on the social development practices and strategies that are embedded in this project. I'm going to concentrate on two, but the main one I'm going to concentrate on that I thought you might be interested in was an unanticipated strategy that emerged just in the last year of the project, called a common fund. But first, I'm going to talk about the strategy of providing affordable, sustainable solar lighting. Of the 133 households that completed the survey, 93% used kerosene before they got the LAMP-DIAC solar lights. And after they got the lights, 90% don't use kerosene at all anymore. So you can see that has a big benefit for the health of children and their ability to study at night. About 86% of the households report that more schoolwork gets done than before, and about 80%, 79% spend less on energy than they used to. Just a few representative quotes to give you an idea of some of the impacts of the solar lighting scheme. I'm not going to do all of them, but just a couple. So, life is better with LAMP-DIAC. My family is safer. The children can study at night and their eyes don't hurt anymore while they study. A related one, with LAMP-DIAC, I don't have to wipe the soot off my children's face in the morning. It also has big impacts around food. For instance, with the lamp over the table, our rice is safe from the mice. Before, they would just come and eat. The light keeps them away. And a similar one down the bottom, we can see when the insects come in, and now we can catch them and eat them. So maybe the one that you can't see right down the bottom was a fairly representative comment. Light is life. It has changed our life. It's a new life. With the LAMP-DIAC, there's a training, skills development and employment aspect. 50, mostly young men, but 2 young women, have been trained as solar technicians, and they do the installations, the repair and the maintenance. They get paid for that. 15 of them have gone off to Dili, the capital, and have trained at a higher level of alternative solar energy and are now working in that industry in Timor-Leste. But the one that I really want to focus on is the unexpected, unanticipated aspect of the project. The project, social workers from Kangaroo Valley and from a community organisation in Dili worked with the local committees. They're quite disparate, there's about 8 villages involved, to set up management committees to manage this project. And every household paid $10 to get the LAMP-DIAC light, and then they pay $2 a month for the upkeep and maintenance. And the committee keeps track of it all and organises the technicians to go and do the repairs. But in 2 of the SUCOs, the ones that had it the longest, the money has just grown and grown. And so they have way more money in the fund than they need to maintain the lights. This community member, the one smiling, made this comment about that situation. I feel that economically, we, the community, are very surprised. We're surprised with the big number of the money, because this money, without the presence of the solar system, we don't know that $2 from every family can guarantee that there will be very big money for the community. So myself, I learned many things from this experience. We can choose to leverage the money to make a small community economy that can grow and benefit all the families. So because of that insight, the social workers worked with the community to set up a common fund, because they'd had experience with those in Australia. These are a savings and no interest loan scheme that's run and managed by the same committee that organises the solar fund. It's membership based, and after people pay for $2 a month for 8 weeks, they can borrow from the fund. And then they pay back a bit more than $2 to pay back their loan. And that means that, more money, the more members that borrow and that are in debt to the fund, the better the fund works. Because as people are paying back their loans, they can, lots more money becomes available for other people. So, some of the benefits of the common fund, it's only been operating in 2 SUCOs for 1 year, and it's already lent over $12,000 to communities that are outside the money economy. And that means that the communities can access loans without having to pay interest on their loans. They can also enable each other to access money that they wouldn't have access to. It doesn't require any outside bureaucracy. They manage it all themselves. All the money is theirs and they generate it themselves. The common funds are really just based on relationships, and that minimises the defaults. In these 2 common funds, the repayment rate has been 98% so far. And that's because people see that if they pay back the money, other people get to have the same opportunity as them, and they're a small village community. If a member doesn't pay it back, then the loss is distributed across the whole fund. So no one family or individual bears the loss. And so it enables them to develop their economy locally. So for instance, in Whara Bloko, a group of women have borrowed from the fund and set up a cassava chip making business. And they're selling the chips to stores in Dili. Other people have borrowed to build fences for their gardens. Others have bought bullocks, paid for school funds. And in this way, it's really generated an economy where one didn't exist. There's lots of, this talk that I'm giving today about common funds is very positive, and about the Lampordiac. Of course, there's lots of difficulties with this project, and has been, and with common funds. It requires ongoing work and diligence to keep the records, to enable the fund to grow, and to ensure accountability. It also requires skills for people around basic accounting, and they've also got to be able to be willing to find a secure place for the funds and a willingness to use a bank, which in Timor-Leste is quite problematic because of the history. I'm not going to talk to you about the trek for Timor, but just to finish by saying that I think that what the Kangaroo Valley Remishu Partnership shows is that local, long-term based community-to-community relationships can make small but significant differences in the lives of the people that are involved in the partnership. And I think that it encompasses all the features, pretty much, of developmental social work, because it's strengths-based. The Common Fund works on the relationships and that already exist in that community, and in turn it builds that sense of belonging in that community. It also enhances people's sense of control over their lives by building livelihoods and employment opportunities. And it builds a sense of hope for a brighter future in the literal sense of being able to see and reducing the night, but also in building the infrastructure and collective assets of the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Lily sharing about the common one.
谢谢我们看到小小的钱其实可以在为社区带来很大的一个福利。好，我们大家如果有问题的话，先忍耐一下，我们留到最后一起来发问。接下来我们邀请吴以轩来做分享，So what she learned in Japan about the learning which contributed to the children protection policy here in Taiwan. Good afternoon. I'm studying at the Graduate School of Social Science at Doshisha University in Kyoto. I'm also the supervisor for the children's organization in Kyoto. Today I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to share about some of the experience for the preschool children's home visiting program, especially for primary prevention of child maltreatment. Because of the time limitation, I would say with regard to the leading questions and also the how we implement various policies, it will be echoed to the later report. So I will just jump over. With regard to the practice in Japan, it is amendments of Child Abuse Prevention Act and Child Welfare Act. So basically, Japan is just like Taiwan is in the Southeast culture, very family-oriented. So also we have so-called the unique culture. So under this kind of background, if we look at the policy in Japan, it could serve as a reference for the policy makers here in Taiwan. So with regard to the child abuse prevention policy in advanced countries regarding the global trend, as you know that the primary prevention is better than tertiary cure. From the perspective of public health, you know, the prevention, I mean the child abuse is just like a pandemic disease. So the longer it takes, the longer it requires for recovery. So prevention is the key to solve those issues. Next is after the post-abuse intervention and support do not necessarily prevent the reappearance of child abuse, because for those abused children, they will have some developmental problems. So they also have misbehavior, which make their parents more difficult to take care of them. And also, under WHO also reported the cost of intensive primary and secondary prevention in community is much less than the cost of tertiary prevention and the treatment after child abuse or negligence. And the other study said in the when we hold a series of propaganda for child abuse prevention and the primary screening in service available for all families, such as infant health examination to manage a potential family at risk intervention, and the service are provided by professionals to relieve parental burden, low risk of child abuse, and facilitate child health. So when child abuse prevention policy in advanced countries can be very popular, as you know, in the late 1990s, urbanization and the formation of nuclear families, which weakened the relationship between the neighborhoods. So when people feel lonely and isolated in a parenting environment, it make things more difficult to ask for assistance actively. And the other reason is that, as you know, that when there's abuse or they have improper discipline. It is involuntary case subjects. So in other words, they resist support, do not ask for assistance actively. So the outreach model or home visit model where service providers actively contact a case subject is very important. So many European countries, US and Japan, they change the supplier format. They focus on the providers to take a proactive contact, especially home visits. So actually the strength of home visits is like it can support families having difficulties in asking for assistance actively, or it is able to manage the actual conditions of families and make an overall assessment. It can also improve parent-child relationship and increase parents' self-affirmation and self-esteem. This is also identify families' crisis in early stages. So, who needs family visits? Preschool children's families. Study also indicate that children aged 3 months to 3 years old are the most vulnerable to abuse. Children aged 0 to 2 suffer the most from abuse. And also mothers with preschool children are easy to feel anxious and disturbed. New mothers feel disturbed the most is from 1 week to 1 month after childbirth. Mothers lacking formal support and having difficulties in asking for assistance are easy to feel disturbed. So let's take a look at the practice in US and Japan. So I just list UK on their practical application. There are some home start or parents in partnership, parent-infant network, or new parent and infant network, which are very helpful. In the state, they have Health Family America or the Nurse Family Partnership, and the parents as teachers programs. So there are some benefits, like I stated on these slides. Next, I'm going to share with you about the practice in Japan. At the moment, they are basically provided by the 15 programs from the government, and then the 4 programs from the private sector. This is only a Japanese version. So this is the home visit program. So basically, you can see right here. Basically, they divide the 15 home visit program and divide it into 7 categories based on the objectives. So this is from mild to severe, and the intervention is from low to high, and we have 4 quadrants. So on the lower left is primary prevention, and then the center is early identification and intervention. The upper right is the most severe and it require immediate support interventions. At the moment, Japan has made a respective legislation, and they have a bill and acts regarding the home visit for children between 0 to 4 months old. We have professional social workers to conduct household visit. Second is from this area, type 5, the home visit program for the parenting. So for the family, they have high-risk family, or they lack proper knowledge, we will provide some educations. So these 2 programs are ongoing for the past decades. So especially for the children or infant younger than 3 years, it has very good benefit. But however, for infants over 3 years old or 3 months old, these 2 programs cannot significantly reduce the risk. So in order to fill in the gap, So professional family visit is very important, just like Home Start in UK, from family program to bring more attention, awareness. So these are conducted by or driven by volunteers. So they need to establish a good relationship with the parents. So they just listen and provide some support. This slide shows some of the achievements from these 3 programs. So we can see this. We have a 62.9% of implementation rate as of July 2011. It can effectively solve a parental disturbance and effectively relieve a parental burden. For the family national parenting home visit, our implementation rate is 92.3%. And then by the end of 2013, the program of family startup, they have served about 58 service sites and provide service for 422 families. The achievements is to reduce parental burden and the disturbance, increase the motive for housework and parenting, obtain parental skills, maintain a stable lifestyle, strengthen connection with the community, and expand interpersonal relationships. Next is about review the strategy for prevention of child abuse in Taiwan. Current situation of child abuse, according to the statistic data. Let's take a look about the child abuse. This is the statistic table of child abuse reported data. So Taiwan government has been promoting the prevention of child abuse. In 2011, we have implemented some of the acts, but however, after the preliminary screening of the Abuse Prevention Center, we consider it is necessary to conduct further investigation. Actually, only 30% of people who really report abuse. There are 2 reasons. First, the person who filed a report have no knowledge, and so it's a misreport. Second is the responsible agencies concerned about their responsibilities, and or maybe they would just misreport because they lack of responsibility. You will see 80% are preschool children, only 20% are in the schools. So it doesn't mean that preschool students or preschool children are more vulnerable. Sometimes they have the capability, but perhaps they are more tend to receive some protections. So their abuse is more prone to be identified. And comparing to the situation at home and the nursing schools, they don't have the capability to protect themselves. And also the abuse were not reported or ignored. Personally, we cannot ignore the time from 2009. There are about 20% of the preschool children. But for the misbehavior and they have difficult to develop their personal relationship. And so the abusers, there are 20% are the relatives, friends, or they are roommates, because they lack the proper knowledge or they have a broken marriage. Next, I'm going to talk about the mortality status. And now we have a Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Children's Welfare Alliance and the other NGO to collect the data, because the time frame is not consistent. So we will conduct the analysis is relatively. For example, Ministry of Welfare and Health and Welfare, they publish data including the disease and the accidents, mortality. So we cannot tell whether whether they are die of abuse, and also the data from the Family Support Foundation and Children's Welfare Alliance. They have significant variations because when they publish the data, the time frame is different. For example, in 2012, the time frame is till November 15th, where the Family Support Foundation they collect the data till the end of November or November 31st. So you can see on top of the mortality by abuse or suicide. Together with their parents, so we don't know whether they are consistent. Next is about the current policy for the children's prevention of child abuse. You can see this is a so-called tertiary system, and we want to educate the primary prevention is to just go through educational propaganda and also establish family education centers. With regard to the primary education, we want to establish family education and early care centers, organize community care programs for children and youth. So there are some good performance. For example, they relieve the burden and enhance the stability. So that's a kind of a network between the family and the school. However, that it doesn't cover the preschool children. And the next is secondary prevention. We have so-called the high-risk families, the prevention and assistance program. So it has successfully screened out 50% of the potential risk family. However, for the areas lack the budget or a rural area, it cannot provide a comprehensive or good coverage. Secondly, this family they need to take the stigma or they are not, so they are very hesitant to receive the interview or support. So that's another barrier. So for the vulnerable children less than 6 years, it is not very popular and not well known. So last year I conducted an interview, and only the secondary agency aware of such policies. So we have applied the so-called proactive care about children less than 6 years. It is because another incident in Taipei City, but the local government and other agencies that didn't conduct good collaborations and implementation. So by the end of 2011, only 0.4% of the children are transferred to Center for Prevention of the Domestic Violence. Recently, because of the mortality of abuse, were mostly by the roommate of their parents. So for the tertiary prevention, we focus on the protection and the rescue of the abused children. So the protection and the prevention of the reappearance of child abuse is the effect is an obvious. So the social workers are required to respond in 24 hours and finish the report in 48 hours. So social workers they have the time pressure. They only can take care of the high-risk families, which also have some impact to their service quality. So from the work content, you can see this level is trying to solve some the case already happened, or something happens. It's rather difficult to apply preventive measurements. Okay, next I'm going to report about what I have done. I mean, last year I have done an in-depth interview. At the moment, I would say there are following challenges to apply child abuse protection policy. The first, it lays a particular stress on residue or selective strategies for prevention of child abuse and social welfare policy affected by government's excessive intervention, and then stable quality of service due to the disparity between urban and rural areas, and also poor cooperation between members in the network and the lack of a supportive universal preventive service. So it cannot effectively apply interventions. So the political impact is also another major factor, especially when we have a low birth rate and aging populations, while the children, they don't have a right to vote, so it cannot draw attention and support, and also have political pressures. Oftentimes, social workers need to change their directions or being asked to handle other cases. So the government's authority on the tertiary institution or abuse. So we can, as a result, we cannot provide so-called consistent service standard. Local government and have a very minimum budgets, so they don't have sufficient the financial support to apply the prevention of child abuse. Next is about the poor cooperation between members, and also I want to cover, like earlier, I always want to emphasize that we lack a supportive and universal preventive service. So from this interview and also to summarize the protection policy in Taiwan and the international trend, you can see in the future, I mean, from now on, when we look at the child abuse policy, I have the following recommendations. First, we should adopt a strategy that focuses on primary prevention of child abuse rather than crisis interventions, because we provide more comprehensive and universal supportive service for families with preschool children by combining parental checkup and children's health examination with a program for active care of disadvantaged children under 6, and expanding the scope of care to pregnant women and newborn babies, and appointing professionals and well-trained volunteers to have home visits. Next is strengthen cooperation between members in the network by holding liaison meetings and training courses. Now, for the primary, secondaries, and tertiary, they all have their siloed meeting, but we need to have horizontal collaboration and cooperations. So there are these three levels. They don't know who are doing what, so they don't have a mutual understanding. And when we apply the prevention of child abuse, we don't have very good performance. Then the next is we need to reconstruct a so-called statistic system for child abuse cases resulting in death. Otherwise, we don't know where we should go and what we should do when we can apply the child abuse protection. It is rather a challenging work. This completes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Now, I got one question. Actually, already somebody sent me a sheet of a piece of paper. Have a question for Amy. Would you guys mind I ask this question first for this person? Okay. 然后底下的人想一想，你们有什么问题要抢答 ？Okay.
You also can think about what your question you have. Okay, within 10 minutes.
Worker from Taoyuan City Government Bureau of Social Services. She said, are there any services for children without the nationality of Australian, such as migrant workers or those refugee families?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to, because I heard her chuckle, I'm going to invite my colleague to also address these questions with me. Some of the specific policies that I was highlighting, there's some restrictions in terms of accessing cash aid, but it depends on your status. And Lynn, would you be willing to say some things? Because you've worked with refugee populations. Yeah.
So for refugees who have who have been accepted as refugees in Australia, yes, they can access early childhood supports and services. There are some specific services for refugees around family support and child protection, but for the refugees who haven't been accepted as refugees and are on islands, Nauru and Manus, as far as I know, they are not entitled to receive the family supports at all.
I have another question. It's Chinese for Mr. Wu. This is a question raised by one student. I would like to know in Japan what kind of training and how long do volunteers need to take part in the training for this kind of home visit or home interview? Thank you.
首先谢谢你的提问。
Thank you very much for your question. In Japan, as I said earlier, for the child abuse cases, they actually started from even the prenatal checks. For the pregnant women, I think they already receive a lot of information. If they need the help of the social workers or need to be interviewed by social workers, they are usually more receptive to such interviews. So this is a family project. You actually need to go to an application process. And household usually will receive information from the community, and before that they file an application for these services. They understand the purpose of these services before they file application. So they are also very receptive to these services. We still have 5 minutes. Any final question? And any? Also the training of social worker. Well, a lot of training specific to each project. Sometimes it takes 3 months or 6 months for the training. So every month they need to spend at least 10 hours. Very solid training. Take myself, for example, I was served the preschool children. I remember I received the 6 months training, including the psychology of the children and also the child welfare policies, so very thoroughly planned training, and also the visit to other related organizations. I do not know other cities. I only know what the situation in Kyoto. Any other questions? No written questions. Please identify yourself first. You have a question, right?
Okay. Thanks for giving us a very comprehensive policy in terms of the child early childhood intervention. I just wonder what kind of role the social workers play in this both policy-making process and also implementation. How are they prepared to do so? And also my question also similar question also goes to Lynn. Is that how social workers actually do the work they do for Australia, right? Going to East Timor, and how they're prepared. And it's just, yeah, thank you.
So one role that social workers have in the system is certainly the information and referral type of role. So the kinds of access to services. So for cash benefits, for example, so letting families know when they qualify for benefits and what kind of benefits they qualify for. And I didn't give the comprehensive list. There are special payments for grandparents, for example, who are caring for their grandchildren, and other kinds of categories of special payments. So certainly social workers would help in that way in terms of letting families know what they qualify for and helping them complete paperwork. That would be one way, and particularly for these services, that they would be involved.
So in relation to how it is that social workers work with the Lampu DIAC scheme, they don't go in as social workers. They're people that are involved in the scheme, or we are, that are social workers, but we're not having that designated role social worker. It's literally a village-to-village relationship that's built up over years, and they work with there's a social work agency, Natilis, in Dili. So they work alongside the Timorese-based workers as well. There are no services like NGOs or services in this district. There's not even a private car. So it's very much working alongside local people and with the local community to build the local governance to run these sorts of schemes. So it's basically long-term relationships, built slowly. And so lots of projects came before the Lampu DIAC. I don't know if that answers your question adequately. How did they start? Yes, so many Australians felt very ashamed by our government's response to what happened to East Timor when Indonesia invaded in 1975 and when they withdrew. And so there was quite a few Australians that were involved with the Timorese government in exile and doing activism to support the Timorese people. And so when 1999 happened, pretty much spontaneously, not just Kangaroo Valley, many villages and towns and suburbs in Australia went to Timor and formed village-to-village relationships. There's a whole network, the Australian East Timor Friendship Network. And they literally went there and then they just started working together. And yeah, they've been doing it for about 16, 17 years now.
So I think time is up, right? Okay, so we really don't have more minutes, right? Okay, I have to ask them. Okay.
It's okay.
It's okay?
Actually, we can still have 3 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes. We were permitted to have more. 3 minutes more. So any last question or comment? Anything? Yeah, please.
你好，我
Good afternoon. I'm from Tainan City government. I'm a social worker. With regard to the preschool policy in Australia, I have a few questions I would like to ask. With regard to the current policy, for example, paternal or maternal leave or cash subsidy. So I wonder that here in Taiwan, we also have a similar cash subsidy and also some incentives for wages. But however, for the newborn baby, for the first baby, there's a certain support, and the second born, there are another amount. So perhaps some of the mother, because of they want to earn that kind of incentive or subsidy, they just produce more babies. So what happens is they really need to support own parentage. So I'm wondering whether when Australia set up this kind of policy, would you take a cash-oriented perspective or food-oriented perspective? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. There was some and I saw my colleagues were kind of nodding. There was some controversy when the policy was first introduced, and it was originally in the Howard administration. It was called baby bonus, and it was more generous than the current amount. It was for $5,000, and I think there was concerns that people would have babies to get 5,000 Australian dollars, which you spend that in nappies and diapers in the first year easily. And it's also been a concern politically in the United States, and so that kind of rhetoric came up in the debates from the shift from in the welfare reform in the Clinton administration, and so that was sort of the argument that that benefits should be less generous because people are having children to access benefits. So it is less generous now. It's called a newborn upfront payment. But I think what it does basically is recognize all of the costs that go along with having children, that people who don't have children don't have to bear, all of the equipment costs, all of the costs for formula and for nappies and for clothing, etc. So cash is more flexible than goods. It's hard to know what people can access in terms of goods. There is this debate going on that Dr. Camilleri referenced earlier about the cash or restricting cash. And there is a move towards a more paternalistic restriction of cash. But the argument against that is that it affects people's dignity in terms of having choice around how they use money. And so even though it can sound like a lot of money, it's really not very much. And so I think it's been a good strategy in Australia, but it has been reduced somewhat now in terms of being less generous.
Thank you very much for all the questions and all our presenters. I think time is really up. We have to close our session at this moment. So let's give a big applause to all our presenters. Thank you for their presentation and sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 好，我们先请这个伊甸基金会的这个银鹤明董事为我们这2天的会议呢做个总结。And we would like to hear from the member of board of directors of Eden Social Welfare Foundation, Mr. Coming Yin, to give us some concluding remarks. 我们掌声欢迎。好，谢谢。非常谢谢我们陈主任啊。
Thank you very much, Dean Chen. I think she's more important. We are at this venue in the College of Law. Actually, we have 26 speakers from different countries. We also see representatives from the government and also from the department. Actually, we say that a lot of times we have to compare a lot of different words so that we can learn from one another. We have the confidence and we also have the perseverance in promoting and implementing developmental social work project so that everybody can be enriched psychologically and spiritually. We have a shared vision and everybody can own our projects with the partnership from the community. So don't be afraid as long as we have a good target and we can achieve our goal. We look forward to the next conference on developmental social work. So on behalf of Eden Social Welfare Foundation, I'd like to thank National Taiwan University for providing us such great conference facilities. So let's promise that we will see one another very soon in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
也请台大社工系陈玉文系主任也为我们说几句话。Let's also hear from Professor Chen.
谢谢伊甸哈。
Thank you, Eden Foundation. Thank you, everybody who participate these 2 days conference. I think I want to express my most sincere appreciation for social workers and all the professors who help us to moderate each sections. I really appreciate the faculties spend their time and efforts, and also our volunteer groups. Actually, there are many students here with us to serve as a volunteer, to learn and help us. So I really want to appreciate Eden Foundation to organize this conference focus on developmental social works, and also invite experts from various countries to share their experience. Last night, Julian mentioned that next year we are going to add one more continent, South Africa and Asia. And next year maybe we'll invite people from South America to share with us their experience. Thank you very much. I think the next chairman of the department will continue to offer our support. On behalf of the School of Social Science, we will offer our support. Although we don't have enough budget, we don't have the building like a law school, but we will try our best to support such a conference. And I wish someday we can have a good auditorium to offer the venue. Once again, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.